And another thing that I've noted you as contrarian, but you can correct me if I'm wrong,
Yes.
is your idea of defense expenditure. A lot of people have been saying let's half defense expenditure. I saw one of the advices to the opposition leader, Mr. Premadasa, I think his name was Mr. Rohan Pethiagura, who mentioned that we should cut expenditure on the military in half going forward. Basically, he also mentioned retrenching staff of the public sector. So how do you feel about those prescriptions in a situation where we are trying to grow the economy to come out of a recession?
Sure. My take on the military, I think this has several sides to it. Okay. So first of all, we're not a high, based on the data I've seen, we spend about 2% of GDP or less on the military.
Okay.
Okay. And that, that's also questionable because, there are all sorts of odd things that are in the defense ministry budget. Right? So given the way that we run and organize our ministries, that's also another problem.
Okay.
But 2%, that is not high by Asian standards. And those countries in Europe, those peaceful countries of Europe who really don't face any existential security threat, they're trying to raise their defense spending to more than 2% of GDP, right? And they have nuclear weapons, right? They don't really need to fear for their security.
Right.
Right? So we're a small country next to a big country. We have some legitimate security interests. We also have a history, as I mentioned, 250,000 people have died in this country.
Right.
During my lifetime.
Right.
Been killed, right, through violence. So there's a legitimate security interest. So I think we need to be careful about evaluating our security needs and the appropriate expenditure. So that is one part of it, and I don't think it is excessively high. And one other comment I will make, most of that budget, I think, is for salaries.
Right.
Paying the military,
right.
the soldiers, right?
So someone's livelihood.
Right. It's not for buying expensive toys,
yeah.
Right? I don't know, I don't track the military acquisition budget in Sri Lanka, but I don't see many reports of us buying expensive jets or planes or whatever. Right? Even the ships we have, half of them are like second-hand ships gifted to us by America or India or whatever. Right? We don't have many jet fighters. So we're not like other Asian countries who spend a lot on these toys.
Right.
So I think we need to be a bit cautious, number one. The other part of this is, in a situation where we face a lot of economic disruption, increased unemployment, social tension, does it make sense to stop paying those salaries to those soldiers? And for two concerns I have. One is, do you want to let whole thousands of people who know how to fire guns out onto the streets at a time of social turmoil? Now, I read recently, I didn't know this was by DBS Jarraj, he had a nice article on the leader of the FSB.
Okay.
The leader of the FSB was previously in jail. Not everyone knows this. He raided an army military camp during the JVV uprisings, managed to get away with some weapons, and then he was eventually captured by the military. This is a guy who's now in the political space.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So I think we need to be a bit cautious about putting young men with knowledge of guns and explosives back on the street. This is not a good time.
Yeah.
The other point to make, which is a more humanitarian concern, the salaries paid to those soldiers go back to their house, their families. It is not the rich people of our country who join the army. It is the poorer people. Right? Right or wrong, that is the reality. Right? It was also the poorer people who joined the LTE. So, I mean, this is a general pattern. And if we're going to cut, let's say we cut 1% of GDP, I'm just giving a number, 1% of GDP is cut in army salaries. Okay, most of that money is going to poorer households. Is it going to save us money? No. Because we're going to have to increase income transfers in some other way by 1% of GDP. It doesn't help us deal with the fiscal problem. Right? And it risks all sorts of other political risks. So my view would be, okay, freeze the army. Let people go if they want to go naturally through natural attrition. Now is not the time.